Welcome to Breaking News to Trading Moves. Right now, Deutsche Telekom is exploring a full combination with T-Mobile US through a new holding company structure.
Yeah, that's the headline we're looking at today.
Right. And we are evaluating exactly what this means for the market, straightforwardly.
Exactly. And to give you some context on the preliminary details here, Deutsche Telekom currently owns nearly 53% of T-Mobile.
Which is already a majority.
It is, yeah. But the talks we are looking at, they are still strictly preliminary. And any deal of this nature requires political and regulatory support to move forward. It's not a done deal by any means. But following the news of this potential holding company structure, TMUS shares moved higher.
So our mission for this discussion is to evaluate the direct winners and losers resulting from this specific headline.
Right, strictly sticking to the market reactions.
Exactly. We are focusing strictly on market read-throughs regarding telecommunications consolidation, strategic control, and, well, wireless scale. We're looking at exactly how the market processes this information.
Which is crucial right now.
It really is. But before we get into the specific stock categories, the winners and losers, I want to ask you a structural question.
Sure, go for it.
So imagine you own 53% of a house.
Okay, 53%.
Yeah. So technically, you make the rules. You're the majority owner.
Right.
But every time you want to, paint the kitchen or fix the roof, you still have to consult with the people renting the basement, the minority owners.
Right, you can't just act entirely alone.
Exactly. So when a company already owns over half of another, 53% in this case, why go through the hassle of a full combination? You already have the majority. So what is the actual tangible benefit of taking it all the way?
Well, it really comes down to total strategic control and capital efficiency.
Capital efficiency.
Yeah. Having 53% absolutely gives you a controlling stake, meaning you generally direct the board in, the major corporate decisions.
Right.
However, you still have 47% of the company owned by minority shareholders.
And they matter.
They absolutely matter. When a parent company wants to, say, move cash around, issue dividends, or perhaps merge certain international assets, having those minority shareholders means you must constantly ensure every single transaction is strictly at arm's length.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, you have to legally prove it is completely fair to that 47%.
Which probably takes forever.
It does. That process requires armies of lawyers, fairness opinions, and just a lot of time.
Right.
A full combination under a new holding company structure, well, it eliminates that friction entirely.
It just wipes it out.
Exactly. It allows the parent entity to utilize the balance sheet, the cash flow, and the strategic assets of the subsidiary with zero internal barrier.
Okay, that makes total sense.
It is really about streamlining the corporate machinery so capital can be deployed exactly where it is needed, without external considerations slowing the process down.
So you basically move from being a majority partner to being the sole owner, removing all that legal red tape. Okay, well, if total control and massive scale are the ultimate goals here, that logically points us straight to the immediate category affected by this, which is the core U.S. wireless leaders.
Yeah, the absolute biggest players.
Right. We were looking at TMUS, VZ, and T.
Exactly. The market read-through here is that if investors believe telecom scale is becoming even more valuable, the biggest national wireless operators stand to benefit from a sector re-rating.
A re-rating, right.
Yeah. A tighter grip on T-Mobile by Deutsche Telekom highlights how vital three specific metrics are in U.S. telecommunications.
And those are?
Subscriber scale, spectrum depth, and network quality.
Okay.
When the market sees a move toward consolidation and absolute control at the very top, it just reinforces the premium placed on those exact metrics.
Think about this like bulk purchasing power or economies of scale in an everyday business.
That's a good way to look at it.
Like, picture a massive national grocery chain versus just a local corner store. The national chain buys produce by the thousands of tons. And because they buy such an immense volume, their cost per apple is incredibly low.
Very low, yeah.
And they have the vast distribution network to sell them efficiently. So in the wireless industry, your produce is the spectrum and the network equipment.
That is a very accurate comparison.
Right. Because if you have tens of millions of subscribers, you can spread the massive fixed costs of buying that spectrum and building those cell towers across a massive base of paying customers.
And those fixed costs are, they are truly staggering.
I can imagine.
Telecommunications is an industry defined by immense capital expenditures.
Right, the towers, the tech.
And acquiring spectrum, which is essentially the invisible real estate in the airwaves that carries cellular data that costs billions in capital at government auctions.
Wow, just for the invisible airways.
Exactly. You are literally bidding against other corporate giants for the right to use specific radio frequencies.
Right.
And then building the physical network to utilize that spectrum costs billions more. But here's the crucial mechanism.
Okay.
Once that infrastructure is built, the cost to add one additional subscriber is essentially zero.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Therefore, the operator with the largest subscriber base inherently possesses superior margins.
Because the network is already there.
Exactly. That 1,001st customer on a cell tower is almost pure profit.
That makes total sense.
And spectrum depth specifically means having a wide enough lane on that invisible highway so that when thousands of customers are streaming video at the exact same time, the network does not slow down.
Right. Nobody likes buffering.
Exactly. So when investors see the headline regarding Deutsche Telekom and TMUS, they recognize that the scale advantage of the major players, TMUS, VZ, and T, is the most durable asset in the entire industry.
Okay, so if T-Mobile gets absolute control and wants to aggressively expand its network to, widen those lanes, they need physical real estate to put their new antennas on.
They absolutely do.
And that physical requirement leads us directly to the companies providing the infrastructure.
Right.
We are looking at the tower operators, specifically the tickers AMT and CCI.
Yeah. A tighter grip on T-Mobile reinforces expectations for long-term network investment, spectrum usage, densification, and infrastructure spending.
Okay.
This is directly supportive for companies that lease key wireless assets to the major carriers.
Right.
To explain the physical mechanics, major carriers do not usually own the actual steel towers you see along the highway.
Oh, they don't?
Not usually, no. They prefer to spend their capital on spectrum and network technology.
That makes sense. Let someone else handle the steel.
Exactly. So they lease space on those physical towers from companies like AMT and CCI.
Okay.
When a wireless leader commits to long-term scale and network superiority, they're simultaneously committing to long-term leasing agreements for tower space.
Wait, I have to push back on this a little bit.
Okay, go ahead.
If the major carriers consolidate power, gain all this scale, and get financially stronger, wouldn't they negotiate cheaper lease terms with the tower companies rather than rewarding them?
That's a fair question.
Right, because if I am a massive telecom giant with total market dominance, I am walking into the tower company's office and demanding a discount on my rent, not paying a premium.
That is a very logical assumption regarding typical vendor negotiations.
Right.
But it meets a literal physical barrier in the telecommunications sector.
What do you mean?
Well, the primary reason the tower companies maintain their pricing power against even the largest carriers is network densification.
Network densification, okay.
Yeah. As carriers upgrade their networks to handle more data, especially with newer technologies utilizing higher frequency spectrum, the physics of radio waves dictate that the signal does not travel as far.
Oh, because it's a higher frequency.
Exactly. High-frequency waves cannot easily penetrate thick foliage or concrete buildings.
Right, so the signal just stops.
Precisely. Therefore, you cannot just use a few tall towers spread 5 miles apart anymore. You need a much denser grid of antennas, sometimes every half-mile, to provide consistent, reliable coverage.
Wow. So the carriers are kind of held hostage by the laws of physics.
They really are.
They need more physical locations, not fewer.
Precisely. The absolute necessity of network densification completely outstrips the carrier's bargaining power.
Because they have no choice but to rent more space.
Exactly. Furthermore, tower companies own the prime real estate. Local zoning laws and community opposition make it incredibly difficult to simply build a brand new cell tower across the street from an existing one.
Oh yeah, nobody wants a new cell tower in their backyard.
Exactly. Because the carriers absolutely must have their antennas in specific geographic locations to maintain their network quality.
Right.
And because they continually need more space on those specific towers for heavier, newer equipment, companies like AMT and CCI benefit directly.
That is fascinating.
The infrastructure spending is locked in by the physics of the network and the insatiable consumer demand for data, regardless of how large or powerful the carrier becomes.
Okay, so from the physical delivery of networks on those steel towers, the narrative naturally advances to how these services are, packaged and defended in the consumer market.
Right, the consumer side.
Yeah. And that points us to the cable and broadband companies with mobile exposure. The tickers here are CM, CSA, and CHTR.
Yes. Competition in the telecommunications sector is focusing heavily on bundled services and customer retention.
Handling, right.
Cable companies that also offer wireless products are far better positioned in this environment.
Why is that?
Well, as the major pure-play wireless carriers assert their scale and dominance, the cable providers are countering by drawing investor attention toward converged broadband and mobile models.
It makes total sense when you think about your own monthly bills.
Oh, definitely.
Like, imagine you have a single payment that covers your gym membership, your weekly meal delivery service, and your favorite streaming platform, all at a slight discount.
Right. It's very convenient.
Exactly. But if you decide you want to switch gyms 6 months later, you realize you also have to untangle your meal deliveries and your entertainment accounts.
And you lose the discount.
Right, you lose the discount. So the friction is incredibly high. So you just keep the bundle. You don't cancel anything.
Exactly.
So in telecom, this is called convergence, right? If a company provides the fiber internet running into your house, and they also provide the wireless service for your smartphone, all on one unified bill, well, the likelihood of you canceling either service drops drastically.
That concept you just described is known as churn reduction.
Churn reduction.
Yeah, and it is the holy grail of telecom economics.
I can imagine.
Customer acquisition is extremely expensive. Companies spend heavily on marketing, device subsidies, and promotions to win a single new subscriber.
Right, giving away free phones and stuff.
Exactly. If that subscriber leaves after 11 months, the company actually takes a loss on that relationship.
Wow.
By utilizing converged broadband and mobile models, companies like CM, CSA, and CHTR lock the consumer into a highly reliable ecosystem,
Right.
which extends the lifetime value of that customer.
Which is exactly what they want.
What makes this relevant to the Deutsche Telekom headline is that the market views bundled services as the primary defense mechanism against wireless consolidation.
Oh, okay, I see.
If pure scale is the ultimate weapon for the wireless carriers, the converged home and mobile bundle is the ultimate shield for the cable and broadband companies.
That's a great way to put it.
Investors recognize that companies successfully executing this converged strategy are insulated from simple price-cutting attacks.
Okay, so having established that the market heavily favors massive scale and bundled packages, the focus turns to the companies penalized for lacking those exact advantages.
Right, the other side of the coin.
Exactly.
Yeah.
This places smaller, regional, and alternative players right in the crosshairs. The tickers to note here are AT&I, SHEN, ASTS, and GSAT.
Yeah. Smaller regional telecom operators faced immediate pressure when the market perceives the biggest wireless operators getting even stronger.
Because they just can't compete.
Exactly. These regional names have less scale, reduced pricing power, and fewer strategic options available to them.
Right.
Additionally, alternative connectivity and satellite-linked names lose speculative appeal.
Really?
Yeah. Investor attention heavily redirects toward the established, immediate cash flow leaders, leaving the alternative players somewhat stranded in terms of market sentiment.
Let me ask you about those speculative satellite companies, ASTS and GSAT.
Sure.
Are they losing out because their underlying technology is inherently flawed? Or is it simply because investors prefer the immediate safety of the giants right now?
It is much more about investor preference for immediate proven cash flow rather than a critique of the underlying technology.
Okay, that's an important distinction.
It is. The alternative connectivity space, particularly satellite-linked telecom, requires immense upfront capital expenditures.
Space is not cheap.
No, it's not. You are launching incredibly expensive assets into space with the promise of future revenue streams years down the line.
Right.
When you have a headline like the one regarding TMUS and Deutsche Telekom, the market is reminded of the sheer financial gravity and current cash generation of the incumbent carriers.
They're just printing cash right now.
Exactly. In a competitive environment where the largest operators are solidifying their strategic control today, the timeline for alternative, higher-risk connectivity stories to reach profitability looks far more challenging to the market.
It's just a riskier bet.
It is a rotation of capital. Investors look at the established wireless leaders and see immediate safety, massive scale, and dividend potential.
Right.
Speculative alternatives lose their relative appeal strictly because the incumbents appear so structurally unshakable right now.
And for the smaller terrestrial regional players, like AT&I and SHEN, they're getting squeezed directly on the ground.
Very much so.
If you are a small regional operator trying to compete, you do not have the bulk purchasing power for network equipment we talked about earlier.
No, you don't.
You do not have a massive national converged bundle to lock in customers. You are fighting a localized block-by-block battle against competitors who have limitless national resources.
Exactly. The smaller regional operators historically survived by serving rural or highly localized markets, where the larger national carriers simply did not focus their primary network builds.
So they sort of had their own little corners.
Exactly. They essentially had localized monopolies. However, as the giants achieve greater scale, generate more free cash flow, and continue their densification efforts,
Right.
their coverage footprints expand directly into those exact regional territories.
Oh, wow.
When a national carrier enters a rural market with a massive spectrum advantage, national marketing budgets, and heavily discounted family pricing plans, the regional operator has very little pricing power to respond.
They just get crushed.
Their margins compress instantly, and their strategic options become highly constrained.
So, taking that standalone disadvantage even further, our discussion examines specific companies caught in the margin trap, the bundling and pricing battles we just outlined.
Right.
These are the narrow communications names. We are looking at the tickers LUMN and FYBR.
Yes. A stronger strategic position for T-Mobile revives concerns about aggressive pricing, bundling pressure, and fierce customer retention battles across the broader sector.
Right.
This environment heavily penalizes communications companies that have weaker market positions or much narrower service offerings.
Because they just do one thing.
Exactly. When the dominant players have the margin room to be aggressive, companies that only offer a single layer of connectivity find themselves trapped.
So, does having a narrow offering mean specialization is effectively dead in telecommunications?
Well, it indicates that specialization currently operates at a severe competitive disadvantage in the consumer and enterprise markets.
Right.
Comprehensive bundling dominates the competitive landscape strictly because of the unit economics we discussed earlier.
All right.
If a company like LUMN or FYBR specializes strictly in fixed-line fiber or legacy enterprise connectivity, they are trying to sell a standalone product.
Right.
Meanwhile, a carrier with massive wireless scale and converged offerings can approach the exact same enterprise customer and offer the fixed-line fiber connection heavily discounted, provided the customer also moves their thousands of corporate wireless accounts over to their network.
Oh, man. The narrow provider simply does not have a secondary product to subsidize a price cut like that.
Exactly. Their margins are trapped because they cannot participate in the bundling battle.
They are forced to compete purely on the price of a single utility.
Which is a near impossible position when facing highly diversified, well-capitalized giants.
It is exactly like trying to sell just tires to a customer, while the massive dealership down the street is offering the tires at wholesale cost if you buy the car and the maintenance plan from them.
That's a perfect analogy.
The tire specialist gets starved out, not because their tires are bad, but because the underlying economics of the bundle are impossible to beat.
That is the exact mechanism driving the market read-through for these narrow communications names. The pricing pressure becomes systemic, and the lack of a secondary product leaves them with no competitive response.
So, synthesizing everything we have explored regarding scale, infrastructure, and bundling, what is the overarching evaluation?
The overarching evaluation is straightforward. The direct winner based on the headline is TMUS.
Right.
However, the broader market trade depends entirely on whether investors aggressively reward wireless scale, strategic control, and physical infrastructure.
Okay.
If the market continues to favor those specific attributes, it directly supports the large carriers, the tower operators, and the cable names utilizing mobile defense strategies.
Right, the ones we covered.
Conversely, this exact same dynamic puts direct, sustained pressure on smaller regional telecom companies, narrow communications providers, and alternative connectivity stocks.
It is a compelling ecosystem where the financial strength at the very top dictates the survival strategies for everyone else in the entire chain.
It truly is.
I want to leave you with a final thought to mull over independently. Given that the preliminary talks for this holding company structure require political and regulatory support, how might regulators view this exact consolidation of wireless scale we just discussed, and could that alter the final holding company structure? This is not financial advice or buy or sell recommendations. This is purely the opinion of the author.